Hey everyone, Pugs here with 2 new reviews for y'all. Today, I'll be closing out Season 7 of SpongeBob SquarePants by covering Big Sister Sam and Perfect Chemistry. Oh boy, what a pair that we've got here. One of the more notorious episodes of the season, and perhaps its most beloved one. I do so love when sister episodes complement each other in this way. Well, I suppose I like when they share a similarity, but being direct opposites is pretty cool too. As always, I'm saying thank you to everyone watching today. I really and truly do appreciate all of you. And this is a great time to remind everyone that I'm hosting a Q&A to celebrate 3,000 subscribers. Get those questions in by July 23rd. You will be reminded again. And now, let's just get right into it. Seems Season 7 couldn't help but have one last notorious episode, but I don't mind because revisiting these old disliked episodes can be fun, just to see if they are actually as bad as everyone says. Big Sister Sam had always been one of those episodes where I'd really been influenced by other people's opinions on it when I was forming my own, and that's because my own opinions were never very strong in the first place. When I rewatched this episode for the purposes of this review, it was pretty easy to come to a conclusion. This episode is not good. However, it is also nowhere near the worst that the show has to offer. Let's discuss. Well, at least the beginning of this episode has Gary. Love that. I love that little snail. As the episode progresses, I'm first reminded a lot of I'm with Stupid, at least as far as Patrick cleaning his house for an upcoming family visit is concerned. And as I watch, I hope, futilely, that this similarity won't extend to how Patrick treats SpongeBob during the course of these 11 minutes. I say futilely, but it's true that the episode kind of doesn't have this happen. I'll talk about that more later, so let's just put a pin in that for now. As you might expect, the family member that Patrick was preparing to see is his sister, who was apparently lost as a child. I love Patrick's dramatics about this, and it's even funnier to me when I think of the line from Something Smells about how he doesn't even have a sister. You know, I heard through the grapevine that recently an episode of maybe the Patrick Star Show addressed this inconsistency. God, I'm so behind on new SpongeBob, it's shameful. Anyway, I like how supportive SpongeBob is here. It's very wholesome. And even when Squidward comes onto the scene, being his normal self, I'm still very much enjoying what I'm watching, and so this is a very good and promising start to Big Sister Sam. Surely this isn't a false promise, right? Finally, we meet the person who this episode is named after, Sam, and she is exactly as you'd expect, a bigger, more exaggerated version of Patrick. Something association of relatively darker skinned characters with unintelligent something. That sounds like I'm joking, but I'm really not. I just don't want to get on that soapbox today, so I'm just hinting to it. But anyway, I like Sam just fine, despite what my description of her that totally isn't referencing another review of this episode might imply. No, she is not the reason why I don't like this episode very much. However, I am somewhat annoyed by how she was written to be unable to communicate in any coherent manner, mostly conversing in the stereotypical caveman-like grunts and single-word responses. To me, unless you're going for someone who is mute, selectively or not, or someone who lacks vocabulary or something, you should just make your characters speak coherently. This shit is annoying. It is upon Sam's arrival that the problems of this episode begin to show themselves. So Sam is an overprotective big sister, which is perfectly fine with me. I like that trope. But my problems come in when she launches SpongeBob in the air because he touches Patrick, or Patrick touches him. It's not even SpongeBob touching Patrick, it's Patrick touching him. But anyway, because I guess she doesn't understand what Patrick meant when he said that SpongeBob is his best friend, because again, Sam is supposed to be a bigger, more exaggerated Patrick. Patrick makes no move to stop Sam when she does this, or to even explain the situation, or to, check on SpongeBob, who just got fucking chucked, like in American football. Mind you, this happens after Patrick himself got accidentally punted in the air by Sam, so he knows that this shit is at the very least uncomfortable. He doesn't even seem the least bit concerned or uneasy or anything. And this is the crux of the issue in this episode. Patrick completely does not care about how his sister is literally hurting other people, people that he cares about. Everything that happens in this episode, in my opinion, is Patrick's fault, to an extent. I mean, Squidward did bring some of his shit on himself, but SpongeBob surely didn't. Sam doesn't do anything wrong in my eyes because she clearly does not understand what's going on, not that Patrick is making any effort to explain that. Later, when Squidward repeatedly insults Sam, Patrick decides to blame not only Squidward but SpongeBob as well. Like, what? What the hell did SpongeBob even do? Not once in this entire episode does SpongeBob do anything wrong, or that could even be perceived as wrong. Patrick's behavior just pisses me off for so much of the duration of this episode, and later when Patrick starts victimizing himself, Lord, that was so irritating. Patrick does finally start seeing the light near the end of the episode, which I would like more if it wasn't such an abrupt switch that's inconsistent with how he was acting before. And see, I feel like this could have been resolved easily. Just have the plot of this episode be about Patrick trying hard to appease his sister since they haven't seen each other in so long, and he wants to reform that bond of her, and that's why he's looking the other way on her behavior, and who knows, maybe this is what the episode was going for. But if it was, it missed the mark by a wide margin, because we never get any indication of anything but complete genuineness from Patrick here. He is not choosing to look the other way to maintain his relationship. He just simply believes that Sam is in the right and SpongeBob and Squidward are in the wrong. This episode isn't actually about people's tendency to overlook the bad actions of their family members. It just happens to have a plot that would work well with that message. At least that's how I see it. Now, Big Sister Sam isn't all bad. There's, of course, the great beginning that I already talked about, and then scattered throughout the episode are some pretty funny moments, like when Sam pushed Squidward's house. I just thought that was funny. Now, why Squidward thought further provoking Sam was a good idea is beyond me, especially after SpongeBob tries to salvage the situation, which, by the way, is another reason why Patrick blaming SpongeBob annoyed me, because he was literally trying to make things better. And speaking of, I also just like SpongeBob's character in this episode. It's like very sensible the whole time, in a way almost acting as the straight man, but not really, which is something that was sorely needed in an episode where seemingly everyone has the conflict resolution skills and emotion regulation of a carrot. Unfortunately, SpongeBob is only mistreated for his mediation here, so this pro of the episode is kinda a double-edged sword. Like, why does Sam destroy SpongeBob's house after Squidward tries to bulldoze their rock? SpongeBob didn't even do anything. And of course, Patrick is of absolutely no help in this situation. It is only when SpongeBob finally stops sugarcoating things with Patrick upon having his pineapple destroyed, telling him that Sam needs to control her temper, that Patrick finally decides to stand up to Sam and tell her that what she's doing isn't okay. This is the part of the episode that makes me think that maybe it was trying to tell the story that I mentioned earlier, but as I already said, the execution leaves a lot to be desired. Sam doesn't take Patrick attempting to talk to her about her temper well, and destroys their rock with Patrick on top of it, and that's what snaps Sam out of her rage. In another show, this would be pretty sad, but in this one, Patrick is revived by cookie dough. Sam leaves, late for her apparent manicure, and the episode ends. And I think this ending is fine, I just wish the rest of the episode fit with it better, you know? I just don't really understand the point of Big Sister Sam. SpongeBob is the only reasonable character in this episode, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but he gets punished for it, treated like he's supposed to be in the wrong until the end. Was the episode trying to say that SpongeBob pacifying both sides was bad and he should have taken a more firm stance against Sam earlier? Squidward was firm, although he was also rude, but not every time he was firm, and he was punished too, which makes sense because that's generally how Squidward's character works. Which is why, if the lesson is supposed to be SpongeBob should have been firm, giving that position to Squidward doesn't really work, since we already know he's going to be punished no matter what he does. Patrick, who is the worst out of all three of the Con Street trio in this episode, gets not one iota of punishment. Well, I guess that's being uncharitable. He does get pummeled by Sam, presumably as a result of letting her temper go unchecked for so long. I just kind of wish these things were made more explicit, because right now I feel like that guy with the conspiracy board. So yeah, I'm kind of just lost about what the point of this episode was, if there even was a deeper underlying story like what I've been saying, or if it just wasn't thought about that way at all. I can definitely see why this episode is infamous, being the frustrating mess that it is. It's certainly not as bad as many of the other duds in this season, such as Yours, Mine, and Mine, Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy, or God forbid, Stuck in the Ringer, but it is definitely a showcase of Patrick being horrible, something that has been happening all too often as of late. And so there's nowhere else to put this episode but in my barely tolerable tier, where it comes in with a score of 4.4 out of 10. SpongeBob is great here, and that along with a few other things I like ensure that this episode isn't in the bad tier, but make no mistake, there's definitely lots to dislike. And now, at last, we have reached the end of Season 7 with this episode, Perfect Chemistry. This season, Obviously, I'll have an entire video about it, so I'm not going to say too much, but let's just say that this season had its ups and it had its downs, and here it's ending on quite the up with an episode that, in my opinion, is a stroke of genius. And Perfect Chemistry is a stroke of genius to me because it finally does something that you'd think this show would have done sooner, paired up the two science-minded characters of the show. Other than potentially Karen, though by this point her character hadn't even been explored enough to assume that she's a science-minded gal. Okay, I'm getting off topic. What was I saying? Right. So this episode pairs up the two science-minded characters of the show, Plankton and Sandy. This isn't the first time these characters have interacted. After all, there was Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy. However, that episode was an embarrassment of an attempt of giving these characters a dynamic, so I don't count it. Anyway, this episode. I really like Sandy and Plankton's dynamic here, and it makes me excited for the possibility of seeing them in more episodes together. Unfortunately, as far as I know, which is about to season 14, there aren't really any other episodes that focus on them and how they interact with each other like this, but I'm still hopeful. Anyway, I love that this episode makes the connection between these two characters as scientists, especially when you think of how Sandy kind of embodies the good scientist archetype, while Plankton is more of an evil scientist. Plenty of cool and interesting interactions can come from them being two sides of the same coin in this way, and even the episode recognizes that potential at the end with Sandy's evil laughter. There's the little things about their interactions too that I like Plankton's reactions to Sandy's Texasisms. Unfortunately, this episode isn't perfect, despite what its name might imply. This episode's main weakness is its beginning, which I guess should be a cue for me to do my normal chronological review of this episode, but I'm not quite sure that's how I'll be organizing things. Perfect Chemistry begins with Sandy and SpongeBob working on a teleportation machine. SpongeBob is quite adamant about being Sandy's lab partner, which grates on Sandy's nerves, and perhaps ever so slightly grates on mine. But not really. It's more not as funny as it was meant to be, but anyway, the beginning of this episode is generally fine, but the issue I have with it is that it lasts too long. Come on, you know what we're here for. Sandy and Plankton working together, get to it already. While Sandy and SpongeBob are trying and failing to get the teleportation machine to work, Plankton is failing with a scheme of his own, which is turning himself into gas to steal the formula. This ends with him getting blown over to Sandy's house, and Sandy brings him back to solidity, which is what begins their partnership. This one weakness of the episode pales in comparison to all of the great that's here. Although there's a few moments where the humor is lacking, this episode is generally pretty funny. I loved the joke where Plankton turned himself into gas by entering what is essentially a steamer with the broccoli. And speaking of this piece of broccoli, I love how this operated as, a sleeper joke. You can consider it as the reason why Plankton's machine smells so bad, and this is something that Mr. Krabs references later in the episode. Brilliant writing, for real. Everything about Plankton's gas plan was great, and this is coming from someone who doesn't even care for bathroom humor. Even SpongeBob's insistence on being called lab partner, while it wasn't great at first, as the episode goes on, it does grow on me. Sometimes you just gotta roll with the punches and trust the process, you know? The whole part where SpongeBob literally dresses as a monkey was also funnier than it had any right to be, and the whole bulk of the episode where SpongeBob is being used as a test subject for Sandy and Plankton's teleportation machine, wherein different parts of SpongeBob end up terrorizing Squidward to the point that the poor dude starts pulling a Candace from Phineas and Ferb, is absolutely hilarious. And then there is, of course, the certifiably fruity moment between Karen and Sandy. You didn't hear anything. Anyway, I also like that this episode doesn't take the predictable route of having SpongeBob become upset about being replaced but hiding those feelings for Sandy's sake, but instead, Sandy actually notices SpongeBob's distress and tries to resolve it. Okay, is this part of the show's tendency to not give Sandy character flaws, which is rooted in misogyny? Something that has been thankfully resolved in later seasons. Yes. Yes, it is. However, I'm thankful for this mature handling of a friendship, so I look at this positively. I also like how once the machine is perfected and Plankton traps Sandy and SpongeBob, Sandy easily saves the day, because she's a girl boss like that, and she even manages to get her evil laugh down. Go off, queen. Well, it only took 7 seasons, but we finally have a season that has gone out with a bang. Okay, maybe season 3 did, but whatever, let me go with the option that allows me to be more dramatic, okay? Anyway, I really liked Perfect Chemistry. This is a pretty loved episode, and it certainly deserves such a positive reputation. It stands out from so many others because of the refreshing new character interactions, which is something I always, always love to see. And these 11 minutes are absolutely hilarious, other than perhaps the first minute or two, which are still enjoyable on their own. Without a doubt, this is an episode that belongs in my amazing tier, where it comes in with a score of 9.4 out of 10. I would even say that this is one of the best of the season as well, but I also know that it's up against some stiff competition, so I guess you'll find out where it's placed in my next video. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. Wow, I can't believe we're already here at the end of Season 7. My favorite number, over already. I'm sad in a way, especially as we move into the last season to be in the 4:3 format, because the 16:9 is gonna look so weird with my graphic style. I should have future-proofed them more. Oh well, that's a bridge I'll cross months from now, so no need to worry about it in this moment. It's funny that these two episodes today are both pretty known, but for very different reasons. I've found that for just about every season, the second half is less known than the first half. That doesn't mean there aren't famous or infamous episodes in the second halves, but it's just a trend I've noticed with like every season now. That's pretty interesting. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's all just in my head too, like I'm seeing things that aren't there. Not in a hallucination way. Man, I mentioned this earlier, but I really need to get my ass in gear and catch up on SpongeBob. I was trying to watch season 14 earlier this year, but I only watched like 5 episodes. I'm just so busy all the time, especially now, but also like there's something about things I like the most and not wanting to engage in updates about them. Like, it took me months to watch Dragon Ball Daima, and I still haven't read anything past the Tournament of Power arc in the Dragon Ball Super manga. I'm just really bad at these things for whatever reason. Something feels intimidating about it, but also I wonder if part of me is scared of not liking it. With SpongeBob, I'm not exactly worried about this. I think the biggest thing stopping me is just feeling intimidated by how behind I am. And I know with SpongeBob it's easier because the episodes are so short, but I also know that I have the extra task of reviewing an episode when I watch it. But maybe I just need to force myself to watch an episode. The only way it'll get done is by doing it and, all of that. Maybe I'll make a schedule. Make it happen. It'll happen, I promise. Okay, well, anyway, let me just say a couple last things. So firstly, second reminder that I'm collecting questions for my Q&A, so be sure to get those in. July 23rd, that's almost here. Ask me anything within reason. And I think that just about wraps it up for today's video. So I'm gonna close things out here, and I'll see y'all in a week's time when I talk about Season 7 as a whole. Can't wait!